University. Additional funding is provided by the North Carolina Nursery and Landscape Association and the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, presenting TarHeelGardening.com, your online gardening resource for North Carolina plants, professional advice, and more. And by Appalachian Naturescapes, custom landscape designs specializing in Blue Ridge native landscape themes, from intimate gardens to elaborate outdoor living spaces. AppalachianNaturescapes.com. Also by the North Carolina Sod Producers Association, representing sod growers throughout the state who produce quality turf grasses to meet a variety of residential, commercial, and recreational turf grass needs. ncsod.org.
Coming up, 2 young gardens budding with beauty, color, and collaboration. We visit the Paul J. Ciener Botanical Garden in Kernersville and the Arboretum and Botanical Gardens on the campus of High Point University. Next. Hi, welcome to In the Garden. I'm Bryce Lane. Most gardens start with a dream and a desire to make a space more attractive. On today's show, we visit 2 relatively new gardens that started exactly this way. The Mariana H. Cuban Arboretum and Botanical Gardens at High Point University and the Paul J. Ciener Botanical Garden in Kernersville, North Carolina. This is Adrian Rothling, who is the garden curator here at Paul J. Ciener Botanical Garden. And Adrian, I know the garden's not that old, but it does have a history.
It sure does. Actually, Mr. Ciener passed away in 1998. He was diagnosed with cancer and died within 3 months. And during that 3-month period, he told his sons he would love to build a garden in his honor. He wasn't born and raised in Kernersville, but ended up finishing his life here in Kernersville and loved the wonderfulness of this town, loved the people in this town, really wanted to give something back to them.
Okay, so then the garden was built, in essence, right downtown, right?
Yes, yes. Originally it started off with 5 acres in downtown Kernersville. We're in the historic district of downtown Kernersville. The endowment helped purchase that property. We've actually expanded 2 more acres, so we currently have 7 acres right here in the heart of Kernersville.
Well, okay, 7 acres, but you've got 2 acres that are pretty much established, is that right?
Full of plants. We have over 1,500 plants, about 15 different individual garden spaces.
Well, walk us through the different garden areas that people would want to make sure they saw when they came here.
First and foremost, our pattern garden, which is designed by Chip Calloway and Associates. It's a formal garden. It's a 4-season garden. It's all these paisley shapes edged in boxwoods, and then the plants inside the boxwoods change out from season to season. Our biggest draw is the tulips and daffodils that we have on display, which is usually around 25,000 a year.
Now that garden, I see maybe some color change going on right now.
Yes, and so the bulbs finished end of April, beginning of May. We ripped them all out. We actually put a lot in different areas of the garden, gave a lot away. We don't throw anything away, we give them away. And then we went ahead and put in our summer plantings, which consisted of coleus, begonias, elephant ears, just a lot of summer plants, a lot of summer tropicals.
Well, I'm seeing what looks like espalier, but could be pleaching. What's going on there?
It's more espalier because we're actually going to let them grow out. We're going to let them grow about 5 feet tall. We're talking about the hornbeam walkway. We have hornbeam trees that we're limbing up 5 feet, and then we're going to hedge them from 5 feet up about another 8 foot. So it'll actually be 13-foot LA hedgeway, and that's your central access between the front door of the Welcome Center and someday the future restaurant.
Well, I know on the southwest side of the Welcome Center, you've got some vegetables growing.
We have a wonderful kitchen garden. That was one thing Mr. Ciener actually specifically said he wanted to have, was a place for vegetables so that children can come in and learn about vegetable gardening. It's perfect height for children. They're raised beds about thigh high, and the children come in, they can harvest whatever they want. They learn about vegetable gardening. All the produce is harvested by nonprofit organizations. We invite these families to come and pick, but learn about vegetable gardening because it's actually really easy to do, and you don't need a very large space to do so.
Right. Well, how about the parking lot? Now that's unique. I mean, is that pervious paving you've got
Part
there?
of it is, and then it's all centrally located into a drain.
I'm seeing these mounted scree areas. Tell us about those gardens, because that's very unique.
You know, the most boring part of any establishment happens to be a parking lot, except for our parking lot. Our parking lot's the prettiest parking lot in Kernersville. We have this wonderful parking spaces, but it's completely planted. We have this wonderful xeric scree gardens, and the xeric scree gardens consist of cactus and succulents, something you would see in the desert, Texas, Arizona, even some other areas that plants can actually grow very well and thrive in drought conditions. And then we've carved these indentations, these notches in the curbing, and we have over 75 different types of hens and chicks.
That's fantastic. I've never thought of doing something like that. That's a very creative approach.
It
looks awesome.
It does. They're all going to grow together. It'll be a solid curb. You won't even know there's a curb there.
Well, along this side of the parking lot, I see a repetitive planting of ginkgo. Which ones are they, and what's the idea there?
So we planted 46 ginkgo trees. It's one called Autumn Gold, which tends to be a little bit more upright, and then of course it has wonderful fall color, and all the foliage turns gold, and the wind comes through, and then it's just a sea of gold on the bottom of the area here. But they're upright, and we planted them close together because we want to hoop the branches together. We're going to hoop the lower branches 3 feet, come up another 6 feet, and then stop it at 10 feet.
Oh, that'll be creative.
So you'll be able to look at the garden through these portals, these windows, and then vice versa. When you're down below, it'll help block your view of all the cars in the parking lot. You won't see that. You'll see these ginkgos that have been woven together into these windows.
Well, I know you've got some special plants planted here. Tell us about the daylilies you have, because I know they're a local source.
The daylilies, most of the daylilies we have on property came from a good plant friend of ours, Wyatt Lefevre. In the last 15 years, he's got into plant breeding. So daylilies happens to be his biggest plant breeding material, rhododendrons, azaleas. But the daylilies, we've got several in this garden. We have several all around. In fact, the first one to come into bloom is already in bloom. That one's called Forsyth Lemon Drop. Forsyth meeting for Forsyth County. So we have all the daylilies on the property start with the word Forsyth.
Oh, how cool is that? So, talk about future plans for this garden.
Yes, we actually want to immediately work below this garden space here, the patio terrace here. We have a lot of events here, wild weddings, so we want to accent the bottom side of this patio terrace, so we have a feature for night blooming plants, give us some night fragrances. We'll also have an Italian terrace, a grand arbor, an event lawn, Japanese garden, woodland garden, children's garden, and I don't know what else.
Well, believe me, that sounds like a tall order. So, sounds exciting. We look forward to watching Paul J. Ciener Botanical Garden grow in the future. And thanks for taking the time to tell us about it. As Adrian mentioned, the tulips and daffodils on display are a popular attraction in the garden. And during our visit this spring, it was easy to see why. Colorful blooms completely filled the pattern garden.
This year we managed to fill the truck up with 24,000 bulbs. 12,000 of those, so half of those are just tulips. And there's about 42 different types of tulips represented out there. You know, I really like tulips because you have your divisions of tulips, and we get them from our good friends Brent and Becky's Bulbs out of Gloucester, Virginia. And they have these divisions laid out in their catalogs. And people don't know it, but there's at least 14 to 16 divisions of tulips. You got the lily flowered, you got the doubles, you got the earlies, you got the lates, you got the species that do so well for us. They're smaller flowers. You've got the Darwin hybrids, which are the big showy tulips. So I try to represent as much as I can out there in that garden. And I don't know what I'm getting until I go up there, because they sell bulbs retail throughout the year, and they close their doors in December. And I don't know what I'm getting until I go up there to see what's left in those bulb crates.
The owners of Brent and Becky's Bulbs donate bulbs to the Paul J. Ciener Botanical Garden so they can be used to show the public a variety of ways bulbs can be displayed, and perhaps to inspire gardeners to plant their own.
Tulips and daffodils generally get planted 6 inches deep, and we literally just right on top of, well, right next to each other, just barely a half an inch apart. We want to go ahead and get them in as packed as possible. And they all come up. There's no suffering out there. They come back year after year for us too in other areas of our garden. And then the crocus, the smaller bulbs, will actually go on top. And they have much smaller foliage, much smaller roots, so those bigger bulbs can come up around it and through it once those crocus and other grape hyacinths, other smaller bulbs actually start to go dormant then. And you won't even see that they're there because all the bulbs have block the foliage that might be turning yellow on those earlier bulbs. I want people to come here and get inspired to do things in their own yard. I order these bulbs from a retail nursery that everybody can order from. I look at the color combinations that I've created, and I'm not a savvy person that way. I like to get dirty, and I don't know what colors go well with each other until I get them out here. And I want people to know that it's going to work no matter what. It's never looked gaudy or garish. It's always looked fantastic no matter what. And I want people to know that they can do that themselves. Whether it's something out of the pattern garden with the tulips and daffodils or somewhere else in the garden. Gardening can be made easy. And people shouldn't be threatened by it, and people should enjoy it. And once you plant something and it comes up year after year after year, I mean, it's just rewarding. I gave away bulbs during my wedding, and that was 10 years ago, and I still visit people who say, my bulbs keep coming up year after year for me. And I think that's such a great feeling, because they're resilient, they're fantastic, they do so well. And a lot of people might be concerned because they have voles or squirrels. And I have the remedy for that. And the remedy is to add permatil to the planting bed, whether you use it as a top dressing or mix it in with your soil. It'll help protect things from wanting to chew down on those roots or those bulbs, or something digging in it. It's a rock aggregate, it's a baked slate material, so it's gonna protect your bulbs. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. You could go ahead and plant them with ease and enjoy them year after year.
Excellent advice, and a gorgeous growing garden in Kernersville. And just about a 30-minute drive away, we find another newly established garden that's making the grade on the campus of High Point University. Who would have thought that a college campus could also function as an arboretum and botanical garden? And Mariana, I know that you played a major role in the development of this arboretum and botanical garden. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how it all came to be.
Okay. When my husband became president, almost 2006, I took a back seat to see what I could be doing to contribute to the campus other than doing my normal duties as First Lady. I helped with other avenues within the buildings, but my love was plants, and I always loved flowers.
So you're a gardener?
I'm a gardener
okay.
myself.
Okay,
I'm an amateur gardener, I'm not an experienced gardener. And my husband loves flowers, and he wanted a lot of flowers. The campus was beautiful when we first came here and had lots of pretty flowers, but he wanted more. So I worked very closely with Matt Mahoney, our director of landscape, and we added a lot more flowers. And then at that same time, the campus was expanding. We were building new buildings and getting bigger and bigger, and that was our chance to add to our collection of trees and make all our buildings very special on the outside too, not just the structure themselves. So I thought that would be nice to have an arboretum and be able to select what trees we want, whether they're native or not native. So I worked with the biology department at that time and developed a wish list. And I wanted to have an arboretum, but it was not an easy matter to do that because I wanted the students to be involved.
Right.
So a new professor had come at that same time. Her name was Emily Neckel, and she said she would help me start an arboretum. So that's what we did. We signed up and had an arboretum committee, and we celebrated Arbor Day every day. We had a selection of students, community leaders, experienced people like landscape architects and horticulturists who were on our committee, who advised us on what to do and how to do it. And we started as a project for the students to be able to be involved. So they helped us label and identify the trees and label them. We developed a system on how to label all the trees, and we wanted to map them, but we were doing it the amateur way. And later on I'll explain how we got further with that. But that took a long time.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
And because we're working with student volunteers, it was very slow. Our student, we had a student who developed our logo, which is our dogwood tree.
Oh, great.
And then she would sketch the leaf of every tree so that we could put it on our labels. And because my husband loved a lot of flowers, I said I would like to develop gardens, and I said this would be a way to raise money and help him raise money. So the first one, I love roses. Roses are one of my favorite plants. This was our first garden.
So this is the first garden.
This was the first garden,
great.
and it was just a flat piece of area of grass. And I said, you know, the worst could be that it doesn't succeed and we'll just grass it back up.
Right.
So please let me try. And
you
he
did a
asked
great
me
job with
how
it.
much it'll cost, and I said, well, it may cost nothing if we can get a donor.
There you go.
But like within a couple of months, I did get a donor, and it
That's
was one of
fantastic.
our trustees named it after his wife.
You mentioned that this is the Rose Garden. You have other gardens that are kind of tucked in special places
Yes,
all over campus,
we have
right?
now 22 gardens.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And each one of these plants is labeled, and we have a map for every garden, and we have insert boxes, as you can see over there, that have where you can go around every garden. And we're working on books to kind of document everything we have. But to kind of, this took a process of like 6-7 years, and to like halfway through, maybe a couple of years ago, it became too big of a job for me alone to kind of do the whole thing with,
Yes.
and I'm not an experienced horticulturist, so
Right.
we needed more depth in our gardens, and that's when we saw John Rothling, and he came and helped us with the gardens and redid a lot of the gardens, and then added a lot of his own expertise in new gardens, and helped us a lot with the Arboretum, and brought the mapping project, which we were doing by hand,
Yes,
and it was
yes.
very amateurish,
Yes.
very old-fashioned. Now, if you go to our website, you can click onto the Arboretum map. You can click on a tree, it'll tell you
Tell
what
you
the
exactly
tree
what it
is,
is. That's
the
fantastic.
botanical name, the name. Eventually, we're going to put more information, the height of the tree, how wide it grows,
Wow.
where it's from.
Fantastic.
It's going to be very exciting. We're going to do the same for all our gardens, actually. Our gardens themselves are mapped also.
Oh, that's wonderful. You know, it'll be fun to watch this project grow, and what a great way to combine education and college with a place for people to come and enjoy. And we really look forward to going and looking at many of these gardens, and look forward to talking to John. So thanks so much for telling
You're
us
welcome.
about that.
And it's just, other than just the beauty, we use it for education. Our
Fantastic.
teachers are using the mapping program.
That's wonderful.
And we involve the community and the students to volunteer. So
Well, thanks very much
thank you
for
very
sharing
much
that
for
with
coming
us.
to see.
As I visit gardens throughout North Carolina and throughout the country for that matter, there's always an NC State connection. This is John Rothling, and John was a student of ours in the Department of Horticultural Science, graduated in 2002, connected with the J.C. Ralston Arboretum in that he worked there for a while. Well, John is now the curator of grounds here at High Point University's Arboretum and Botanical Garden. And John, it's a beautiful place. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how the Botanical Garden and how the Arboretum is organized.
We're basically campus-wide, so I've got 320 acres, give or take an acre or so, to play with. So it's a wide open playing field to do a lot of different things.
So you're really tending to the college campus grounds as well as creating gardens, is that correct?
Exactly. It's one of the things where instead of just having a landscape, we've taken the landscape and elevated it to, I think someone used the phrase, a garden-esque landscape.
Okay.
So we're taking those spaces, and we have individual gardens that are scattered about that are more intensive, some themed, some just, you know, a space to direct you towards.
Well, if I were a visitor to High Point University but wanted to check out the horticulture, check out the plants, what are some of the gardens, featured gardens, that you would hope they would see?
In spring, the azalea path, which we have around 57 different types of azaleas, a lot of the encore azaleas. It's one of our missions to also teach people, so we've gathered all the different encore azaleas as an opportunity to showcase which ones are best for our area. That's spectacular in spring. We've got azaleas, we've got witch hazels, quince. That whole garden just lights up, and you know, a couple thousand bulbs scattered amongst that garden. One garden that's near and dear to my heart, because it was the first garden that I created as an example of what my vision was for the campus, is the Woodland
right here?
Hillside. Yes. Then we have the Lakeside Gardens, where we took something that was utilitarian. You have to create, you know, runoff capture ponds. Well, there's no reason they have to be just a pond with grass. So we've created the Lakeside Gardens, and we've, you know, planted things around there that'll thrive in wet soils or dry soils. That's spectacular. Around the pool, we have a tropical garden that's probably a zone or zone and a half warmer. We have sago palms that are living in High Point University.
That's fantastic.
That should be at the beach.
Now you have, I saw there was a perennial garden and it was called the faculty perennial garden?
That was one of the original gardens started before I came here, where faculty and staff brought in plants from their own gardens to help create this garden. And it's one of those things of making the connection with not only just the students, which is always where we're reaching towards, is to bring the students in, but the faculty and staff to get involved and to have a connection. And that's part of it.
Well, now speaking of connections and students, I was really intrigued with the area where people come in and park, when that first, fountain area there. Tell us about that.
It was amazing. When I first came to High Point University, and when you pull in, when students have their college visit, when they come in, it's a special experience, because this is a big transition for a parent.
Absolutely.
But they come in, they see their name, and prior to what we've done with that space, it was just they had their sign with their name on it. But now we've created this what we call the welcome garden. It was born from a vision from Miss Cobain that we transformed to fit our climate, because originally she saw it in France. Well, of course, North Carolina is anything but France at times in terms of our climate. But we created this space that has perennials, it has annuals, it has woody plants in it, something that it's an impact of this is different.
Right. Now, the last thing I want to talk about real quick is collections. I know you're still committed to creating collections, being an arboretum, and the example that I can see even right from here is the redbud collections. I know that's a unique connection for you.
Redbuds, it goes back to my connection with the Ralston Arboretum, because they were near and dear to JC's heart. They've always been a favorite plant of mine. So we've built, redbud collection. Now, of course, the Ralston has the crown jewel, but I can kind of, still have my own collection. And part of it is trying to look at, in this market, we've got a couple gold redbuds, we've got a couple purple leaf redbuds, we've got a couple weeping redbuds. And I can kind of get them all in here and try to plant them in areas where we can see, is there a better one?
Which one does the best?
And that is a goal.
Well, John, thank you very much for highlighting some of those gardens. We'll go take a look at them, and it's great to see you in a place here at High Point. You're doing so well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our plant of the week has a great NC State and High Point University connection. Remember, send in your suggestions for a plant of the week to our website or our Facebook page, and if we use it on a show, we'll send you an In the Garden t-shirt. Well, our own John Rothling is responsible for Cercis canadensis Hearts of Gold, the Hearts of Gold redbud. And as the story goes, a friend of the Rothling family, and the Rothlings live in the greater Greensboro area, had a tree they thought was a little bit sick, a redbud if you will, and invited the family to come and take a look at it. Well, lo and behold, here was a plant that had leaves that were chartreuse colored as they emerge in the spring. And in fact, if you look closer, you can see even the young leaves have a pink tinge to them. Well, that plant wasn't sick. It was a chance seedling that they had growing in their backyard. John took some budwood and had it grafted, and lo and behold, we have this new cultivar of plant called Hearts of Gold. Hearts of Gold redbud grows about 20 to 25 feet, and as that new growth emerges in the spring, you can see the small leaves have a pink tinge to them, and as they get larger, they turn a bright yellow, only to turn a light green or chartreuse color as they mature. Now, through the summer, this plant will turn a little bit more green, and it'll develop a yellow fall color. This plant should be planted in a well-drained soil in a full sun location. You can get away with a partially sunny location, but you might not have that brilliant color like you see here. Now, John has chosen to plant this plant in amongst other redbuds, his redbud collection, as he mentioned earlier in today's show, and he's got it planted right next to a rising sun redbud. Now, John's put the two together to evaluate how well they grow and to compare and contrast the color of the leaves and the habit of growth, etc. It's a great opportunity to evaluate two plants that resemble one another to see how they're different and how much they're the same. It's a great plant of the week, Cercis canadensis Hearts of Gold, the Hearts of Gold redbud. Well, that's about all the time we have for this week. And we especially want to thank the folks at High Point University and at Paul J. Ciener Botanical Garden, and especially John and Adrienne Rothling. And if you haven't figured it out now, John and Adrienne are husband and wife, and they work right down the road from one another. So thanks to both of them for their hospitality. So until next time, I'll be looking for you in the garden.
To register for In the Garden, the course, call NC State's Distance Education Program at 1-866-GO-STATE. That's 1-866-467-8283. Or log on to distance.ncsu.edu. For more information about the program or to suggest a plant of the week, go to unctv.org/inthegarden.
Funding for In the Garden is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV, and by North Carolina State University. Additional funding is provided by the North Carolina Nursery and Landscape Association and the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, presenting TarHeelGardening.com, your online gardening resource for North Carolina plants, professional advice, and more. And by Appalachian Naturescapes, custom landscape designs specializing in Blue Ridge native landscape themes, from intimate gardens to elaborate outdoor living spaces. AppalachianNaturescapes.com. Also by the North Carolina Sod Producers Association, representing sod growers throughout the state who produce quality turf grasses to meet a variety of residential, commercial, and recreational turf grass needs. ncsod.org.